You have to really love the arrogance with which James and John ask Jesus their question. They say, Lord, we want you to give us whatever it is we ask of you. Pretty arrogant and pretty self-centered, to say the least. You know that when you ask a question with such a self-centered demand, you're definitely not in a good frame of mind. And according to the Bible, you're not in a good spiritual space. Think of the prodigal son who goes to his father and says, Father, give me my share of the inheritance. Or Martha, when Jesus comes, says to him, Lord, you tell my sister to help with the details of hospitality. It's not a good spiritual space, but all of us are there at some point. Many of us are there too often. It's called the ego space. It's all about me and it's all about my drama. And of course, the only place that leads us is to demand more, which usually brings us into a cycle of frustration because I don't get what I want or the way I want it or the way I think I should get it, and therefore I need to insist on more. Now, the biblical point of view is that if we are in the correct spiritual space or have the correct spiritual condition, our response or the way we ask is simply, Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. Or, Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will. That attitude is fundamental for a proper spiritual condition. And so what is it that James and John really want? As they ask Jesus, one to sit at your left, the other to sit at your right. In other words, what they want is power and honor. Power and honor. Two of the four things that St. Thomas Aquinas say human beings use as a substitute for God: power, honor, wealth, and pleasure. Now, to be fair to James and John, Jesus was speaking a lot about the kingdom, and that there would come a time when Jesus would enter fully into his kingdom. And so James and John were thinking in this vein, thinking in this way. The problem, of course, throughout the gospel is that they misunderstand the true nature of Jesus' kingdom. It would not be a duplicate of worldly power and honor. But they, like us, have a lot to hear, often hear about the way things are in this world. And like them, we need to listen carefully to understand the true nature of Jesus and his kingdom. And the beauty of Jesus' response is that he doesn't get angry at them, he doesn't chide them, but rather he very patiently explains to them the true nature of his kingdom, and he starts to lead them into a deeper and deeper understanding of that kingdom. In other words, he's taking them from a very arrogant spiritual space to a proper spiritual space. You know, James and John, their desire for power and honor was not all bad. With power, we can get things done in this world. The problem is when power is self-centered, then it becomes an imposition of my will upon another. In Jesus' kingdom, when power is properly exercised, it's done in the service of love. And the history of the church is filled with people who had tremendous power, but they used it to serve themselves. Then there are those people, we call them saints, who had tremendous power as well, and they used it to serve God and others. Think of St. John Paul II in our own time. He used his moral power to help bring down the Iron Curtain in Eastern Europe. And he did it without firing a single shot. Or think of even St. Francis of Assisi, a gentle, humble man who had great power, even though he owned absolutely nothing. But he used that power to bring the gospel to bear on the world in which he lived. And the same is true with honor. Again, if it's attached to our egos, it's all about me. And it's all about myself and the glory that I get, which usually means I have to diminish you. Honor, St. Thomas Aquinas says, is the flag of virtue. We honor someone who is morally virtuous. We honor someone with great character, not for themselves, but to show others, here's a good thing. Here's a virtuous way to be. So power and honor in and of themselves are not bad, but they're also not God. They're goods that human nature can use to serve others. The problem that James and John had was that they were grasping at them not for service, but for self. When the ego grasps power and honor for themselves, things get dysfunctional and sometimes even dangerous very quickly. Just think, now that we're in an election season, if one of the candidates is asked the question, why do you want to be president? It's a tricky question, not easy to answer. If they say, I would like to be president because I would like to do A, B, and C to make this country better, at least they're showing they're not seeking office to pump up themselves or their own ego, if they're being honest. The ego will want to use power and honor not for God's purposes, but for our own exaltation. In the history of tyrants, megalomaniacs who seize power show how dangerous it can be. When spiritually immature people get power, whether in politics or in the church, they can wreak havoc very, very quickly. What Jesus is pointing out to James and John is that in order to use power and honor properly in his kingdom, they'll need to go through a period of spiritual growth and development and submit themselves to a lot of discipline. Otherwise, they would become manipulative, cruel, oppressive, overbearing. So Jesus says, can you drink of the cup that I will drink? Can you be baptized with the baptism of which I will be baptized? Can you pick up your cross and follow me? What he is saying is, you will indeed, James and John, get power and honor in my kingdom. But first you must learn to deny yourself and its benefits, and learn to use power and honor in the service of others. You know, as I was listening this week to the news, the president announced that he would continue to keep the military in Afghanistan. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it was certainly interesting listening to the president who campaigned so strongly to pull out all of the troops. It seems that the president has gone through his own spiritual maturity process, learning that sometimes we have to do things not because they are politically expedient or because they bring us honor or accolades, rather because they're done in service to a greater good, which sometimes isn't our own egos or reputation. It's amazing when power and honor get tied to our egos, we become less and less free, if you think about it. Since when I have power and honor, I begin to do everything based on what you think of me, what others think of me. And it's a really horrible place to live, because I can never get enough honor from you. That's why the saints could care less about the opinions of others about themselves. They were, or are, the freest people around. So the question then is, how do we become free? Well, if you wish to be great, if you wish to have power and honor like James and John, then be a servant of others. Why? Because when you are powerless, then you only have the power of God to rely on, and not your own ego, not your own strength. God's power, of course, is real power. And then the only honor you will be seeking is God's honor. All of it is simple spiritual common sense. And in Jesus' kingdom, that's the way to the highest place of honor in his kingdom.
Like what you just heard? Visit Our Lady of Mount Carmel's social media pages for more faith-filled content. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Read the OLMC Tempe blog. Your Catholic community is online. Let's stay connected.